There we go. So today I have a few comments. I want to reflect a little bit on the idea of vocation. Not vocation in the conventional sense of like your career, profession, or role, but vocation as a kind of a way of living life. And the original meaning of the word vocation was calling, and that often was associated with like a religious or spiritual calling. But over time, it's come to mean a calling to live intentional and purposeful lives. The root of the word has vox in it, which means voice. So there's a suggestion about listening to your own inner voice to discover your purpose in life. And it doesn't have to be a big thing where you change the world or anything. And mindfulness can support this kind of inner listening because it's about being intentional and being present and choosing to be here, even if things aren't going exactly our way. So being fully present gives us a chance to live a life of purpose or meaning or value. It's worth noting what Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who founded analytical psychology, when he said, a psychoneurosis must be understood ultimately as the suffering of a soul which has not discovered its meaning. So in mindfulness practice, the questions around meaning, I think they naturally arise as we practice. What's important to me? How can I be more intentional in my relationships to people, to others, to family members, to my work, whatever it is, whatever relationship? And how am I really living this life, this one life, as it is? And is it in line with my values? The founder of MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, Jon Kabat-Zinn, often asks during long mindfulness retreats, what is your job with a capital J? Not your title, not your role, but your deeper work, your way of maybe we could say inhabiting this life. Kabat-Zinn reminds us that mindfulness is not just about stress reduction, though it certainly does include that. But he writes that mindfulness is also about falling awake into our lives, and that ultimately your life is the practice. If that's true, then vocation is something that's not separate from the practice. Vocation is the expression of the practice, and maybe it also motivates our practice. Many of us begin practicing mindfulness because something hurts, there's stress or anxiety, physical pain, grief, disconnection, or discomfort. And the practice does support us in our suffering by teaching us how to hold that suffering in a particular way, a non-judgmental way. And doing so has been shown to change the suffering in us. When Jon Kabat-Zinn called it mindfulness-based stress reduction, he was acknowledging that change does happen. In fact, stress can be reduced. Diagnoses can change and healing can occur. And now, after more than 40 years of research, we see that there are many ways mindfulness practice works with and even eliminates our various kind of presenting conditions. Mindfulness practice has been shown to build and strengthen pro-social neural networks in the brain, increase resilience, lower blood pressure, reduce depression and anxiety, and much more. But we also know that it's ultimately not just about fixing stuff. Beyond working with our problems, mindfulness works on even a deeper level by helping us to be fully present in our lives as they really are, and to find the meaning and purpose in them. And as we practice over time, our orientation toward our life might begin to shift. As Kabat-Zinn puts it, meditation is not about getting anywhere else, but about allowing yourself to be where you already are. And in truly being here in the moments, some space can open up to see beyond kind of the troubled spots that we're dealing with, and also live into that larger field of awareness that's not constricted by our lower back pain or any other presenting diagnosis. A Choctaw elder and spiritual teacher Stephen Charleston writes, "We're here for a reason. Our lives are entrusted to us for a purpose. It's not always an easy or glamorous job, but the vital work of restoration, reconciliation, and renewal must be done by us, he says. Our lives are entrusted to us in that sense. So we might ask then, what is the work, in Charleston's words, of restoration, reconciliation, or renewal that's mine to participate in? What is this moment asking of me? Not in a broad, abstract way, but concretely. How can I learn to be more present to my children? How might I see the deeper meaning in the work that I do? How might I support my aging parents? How do I respond to conflict, injustice, and wars that are both personal and global? 2 years ago, Jon Kabat-Zinn called together a few hundred mindfulness teachers and researchers from around the world for a 10-day retreat in upstate New York. It was the beginning of an effort to form an intentional group of colleagues in the field of mindfulness so that we might better support one another as we considered the future of the teachings and their application to advancing health and wellness for individuals and communities and for the planet itself. The retreat was an invitation for many of us to deeply consider or recommit to our job, capital J. Kabat-Zinn began the 10-day retreat by reading a letter from the Buddhist scholar and teacher Bhikkhu Analayo, who was unable to be physically present but wanted to express his support for this emerging world community of mindfulness teachers and researchers. We listened to Analayo's written words just before entering the silence of the retreat. He said in a letter to all those who were gathered, a significant topic has been directing attention to the external dimension of mindfulness, which builds on its internal cultivation. External here means mindfulness of others, and by extension of the situation of the world in which we all live together. This complement to internal mindfulness has been lost from sight in the course of the history of Buddhism and with the arrival of mindfulness in our individualist contemporary culture in the West. And this trend has become even stronger. Bringing back to life this natural dimension of mindfulness is decidedly not a call to diminish or forego time on the cushion, he says. Our practice is sacred. It is the hub of the wheel of our lives and should always be our priority. But the wheel is more than the hub, and there is ample room for us to weave the compassionate orientation that is intrinsic to mindfulness into our lives off the cushion. Analayo was pointing out, in support of Kabat-Zinn's effort to bring teachers and researchers together for deep reflection, that mindfulness was never meant to end with the individual or the internal kind of dimension, where we're only concerned with my breath, my body, my thoughts, my emotional life, and all the other I, me, and mine that we tend to be doing in the practice sometimes. And it's okay to be occupied with your own interests and issues, but it's also important to engage in the external dimension. Mindfulness of others, mindfulness of the world, of the condition of the world. Neither Analayo nor Kabat-Zinn is suggesting we abandon formal practice. In fact, quite the opposite. The inner cultivation of mindfulness, our time sitting and breathing and just being, attending, is foundational. Practice is, as Analayo says, the hub of the wheel, but the wheel not only is a hub, there are spokes extending out to others and to the world itself. And the two are intimately connected. So vocation is not something we figure out just once and for all. It's something we continue to live into now at this point in my life. What am I being called to? And vocation is not some completely external thing. It's connected to our inner experience as well. So maybe the invitation today as we practice is to consider that question. What is my capital J job in this world, in this life at this time. So we'll begin with just a simple sitting practice, and then maybe at the end of it, I'll cue us to maybe consider that question for a few moments. So let's begin in this formal sitting practice by adjusting our posture, sitting in a stable, upright, but relaxed position on the chair or cushion. And placing the hands resting gently in the lap or on the legs. And if it's okay for you to be closing your eyes or just simply lowering your gaze down. And perhaps softening the muscles in the face and the jaw. And bringing the attention to the breath, noticing the sensations of air flowing in and out or rising and falling. And let this be your anchor or home base for present moment awareness. And when the mind wanders, which it will do that into thoughts, memories, storylines, plans, emotions. The instruction is not to suppress this, but to notice and perhaps even name it, thinking, planning, worrying, remembering, and then come back to the breath. Each time you notice the mind wandering, gently guide the attention back to the breath, the body, and doing so with an attitude of kindness or compassion or understanding or friendliness to that which is showing up. What we broadly call non-judgmental awareness. And it is that moment of returning to the breath or any other present moment object of awareness in order to return to the present. That is the heart of the training. Returning again and again, each and every time you notice that the mind is off into the past or future. And each time you come back to the present moment, you're returning to the heart of the matter. Just notice where the mind is right now. And gently return to this moment if the mind has gone off into the past or future or caught up in a storyline. And it's essential that we notice and also return the mind to the present with a sense of patience, non judgment, and even curiosity. It's very helpful to remind ourselves that we're not trying to freeze the mind or shut things out of the mind. We're just becoming aware of the activity of the mind and then choosing to return it to the present moment for this formal time of sitting. Before we conclude our sitting time, let's take the next 2 minutes just to consider this question. What is my capital J job that I can offer this world? It doesn't have to be a gigantic, life-changing kind of job. It might be that you move to the other side of the world and join the Peace Corps or something, but it doesn't have to be that. You might just choose to inhabit the job of loving your family or your enemies. It may be to just commit to being a more mindful person through practice. What is my capital J job that I have to offer the world? Just sit with that, even if nothing particular shows up at this time, but just live inside this question. It's a bit of a doing question, but it's also a being question. Not the particular work or role or position that I hold, but my capital J job.